India has produced many great men and women who have sacrificed and dedicated their lives to the nation. As we enter the 66th year of independence, there is no doubt about the debt this country owes to all these great Indians. Here it's been our endeavor to find out who amongst them, in a sense, is the greatest Indian. So yes, indeed, after millions of votes, weeks of debate on this unique History TV18 CNN IBN initiative, along with our print partners Outlook India, the people of India have decided whom they believe should be honored as the greatest Indian.
Yes, indeed it is. No more words now. Let's find out who is the greatest Indian as chosen by an on-ground poll, an eminent jury, and a popular vote.
The greatest Indian as chosen by the viewers, B.R. Ambedkar. Ladies and gentlemen, Baba Saheb Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar, chosen the greatest Indian. Shabana, ask me you first, since you were part of the greatest Indian jury.
I think that it's very important that we revisit him at this time as the greatest Indian, because what he gave our people is justice and equality. Justice to those who had historically been denied justice. And we can only call ourselves a civilized nation if we work towards repairing the harm that we have caused generations of people. So, Adab and Salam, Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar.
Marjorie Dixit?
I think today's generation has learnt about Baba Saheb Ambedkar only through their textbooks, and I think this will reintroduce them to his greatness and what he has done for our country. So I think it's a wonderful thing, and hats off to Mr. Ambedkar.
Harsha?
When we were growing up, for us, Baba Saheb Ambedkar was an intellectual who gave India one of the finest constitutions that we've ever had. And I hope that is how the generation after ours remembers him by. And I hope contemporary India allows the next India to remember him as the intellectual he was, and for the sense of equality and a fair play stood for, not for anything else.
Amitabh Bachchan?
I just feel that in a country as diverse as ours, and with so many restrictions and so many problems that Shabana has been mentioning about, for someone to structure a constitution that is going to take care of it, and for so many other greats that came after him to follow that constitution to the T, is the greatness of Baba Saheb Ambedkar.
Give a one big round of applause to all our eminent panelists and those who've joined us in this journey.
Baba Saheb Ambedkar, we salute you. The nation salutes you, and all the 10 greats picked by this nation. A big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
The people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic, give to ourselves this constitution.
The preamble to the Constitution of India is something every school-going child knows by heart. 85 words that define the spirit of our democracy, every word very carefully chosen by the nation's first Law Minister, Bhimrao Ambedkar. He's the man who was the chief architect of our constitution, also the Dalit icon who gave millions a voice against discrimination. But his story is much, much more than that. And it all begins really in this small school in Satara. Books in hand, 9-year-old Bhim walked into Maharaja Pratap Singh High School in the year 1900. But for the man who authored India's finest piece of writing, his baby steps in learning were a travesty. His first lesson was the existence of caste. Bhim was a Mahar, a caste of untouchables whose traditional duty was to dispose of dead cattle. Banished to the bottom of the Hindu society, their touch, their voice, even their shadow was seen to be polluting. Inside school, Brahmin teachers refused to teach little Bhim Rao. Some agreed, but made him and his brother sit in a corner on gunny bags that they carried from home. The humiliation was endless. If the boys got thirsty, they had to wait for a peon to come in and pour water into their mouth, because outcasts weren't allowed to touch either the water pot or the water inside it. And God forbid, if the peon was absent, then the boys would go thirsty the entire day without a single drop of water. Young Bhim responded in the best way he could. His sheer academic brilliance won him grudging admiration and a new surname. But a new surname didn't help. When Ambedkar's family moved to Bombay, the prestigious Elphinstone High School did admit young Bhim, but did not let him learn Sanskrit. The language of the ancient Vedas could not be polluted. He was forced to study Persian instead.
Turn in any direction you like. Caste is the monster that crosses your path. You cannot have political reform, you cannot have economic reform, unless you kill this monster.
In 1907, Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar became the first person from his community to get a matriculation from the Elphinstone School. It was an uncommon achievement, but what followed even more so. After getting a scholarship from the King of Baroda, he chose not to sail to England, as was the trend in those days, but to go instead to America for higher education. It was the land of equality and liberty. Columbia University opened up a new world for Ambedkar, a world of books and of new ideas. A man of versatile intellect, he first obtained a doctorate in social sciences and then moved to London to study law and economics. Ambedkar would go on to author over 50 books. Caste was his favorite subject, but he also wrote about economics, law, even a work that controversially supported partition.
He was a legal brain, a constitutional brain, a top-class economist. He also wrote some important works in sociology of the caste system, the most well-qualified intellectually of any Indian politician of the 20th century, probably ever.
Dr. Ambedkar, Maharaja is expecting you.
From England, Dr. Ambedkar returned to work for his benefactor, Sayaji Rao Gaikwad, who was the ruler of Baroda.
Sir, I need a place to stay.
You can't stay.
Only to realize that all the degrees in the world couldn't get him a room to stay. At work too, he faced insults almost every day.
Look here, you might be a senior officer, but you can't touch this water.
You could see the shine on his face of intelligence with all that he came. But a small office, his core people, like, they were mere simple clerks, they were high caste. They say that you can't take water from the same pot as we drink. But if you see very carefully, the revolt comes first there. He says, no, I will drink water from the same pot.
Dr. Ambedkar returned to Bombay in 1917, staying in a 2-room chawl with his wife Ramabai. The Swaraj movement was gaining strength, but Ambedkar wasn't impressed. The young nonconformist had a strong mind of his own. Writing in Muknayak, The Dumb Hero, a newspaper he started in 1920, Ambedkar says,
A Swaraj where no fundamental rights were guaranteed for the depressed would be no Swaraj for them at all. It would be a new form of slavery.
As India's freedom movement gathered momentum, Dr. Ambedkar began teaching political economy at Bombay's Sydenham College. Initially skeptical, even Brahmin students became lifelong disciples after listening to his lectures. This portrait, which hangs in the college today, is a testimony of his impact. In 1923, Dr. Ambedkar started his law practice at the Mumbai High Court. But the outcast lawyer found cases hard to come by in spite of his brilliance. For Ambedkar, it was now time to openly challenge the dark clouds of Hindu orthodoxy. He founded the Bahishkrit Hitakarni Sabha the same year to mobilize Dalits against their exploitation. 4 years later, he did the unthinkable. At the time, this water tank at Mahad in Maharashtra could be used by everyone. Hindus, Muslims, even cattle, except the Bahishkrits, the outcasts. But now the time for waiting was over. Bhim Rao led by acting himself. Self-respect, self-help, he thundered, leading scores of outcasts to the water tank. As he touched the water and drank it, the crowds followed. The impact of Dr. Ambedkar's act was revolutionary. 85 years later, his grandson Prakash repeats the same act at the same tank without a second thought. It is something that explains Ambedkar's legacy. It wasn't just about water, it was about humanity and equality.
Untouchables had accepted caste system mentally, and therefore since they had accepted it mentally, he said that mental slavery is first which should be attacked and then the physical slavery. To get out of this mental slavery, he said water which was being denied to a common man, if I can pick it up and drink it, then the other man, then the rest of the people will have a confidence in the whole thing. And therefore he exercised the right in this right over here, and lakhs of people followed him.
A day later, when priests carried out a purification ceremony at the water tank, Ambedkar was deeply hurt. 8 months later, he returned to Mahad, this time to ceremoniously burn the Manusmriti, a book he described as the Bible of slavery.
Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkarancha!
Ambedkar's anti-caste movement rapidly gained momentum. Nasik's Kalaram temple was the next target. Ambedkar and his supporters laid siege at the temple gates in 1930, demanding untouchables be allowed to enter. But Baba Saheb's temple entry movement was met with a lot of resistance that only fueled his disillusionment with Hinduism.
Though I was born a Hindu, I solemnly assure you that I will not die as a Hindu.
20 years later, he would fulfill his vow. Dr. Bhim Rao Ambedkar was now a voice India couldn't ignore. From within the freedom struggle, he was attempting to carve out a political relevance for the Dalits. For him, it was the only way to emancipate India's 16 million outcasts. Ambedkar's decision to accept an invitation to the Round Table Conference in London greatly angered the Congress. The party called him a British stooge. And so, the stage was set for a confrontation between two champions of the downtrodden, Gandhi and Ambedkar.
While their goal was similar, their methods were somewhat different. Ambedkar was more radical, more confrontationist. He wanted to take the Dalits outside the Hindu fold. Gandhi thought that by abolishing untouchability, by giving Dalits greater political opportunities, Hinduism could be saved.
The British announced the Communal Awards for Dalits in 1932, granting separate electorates and seat representation to minority communities. An upset Gandhi announced his resistance with a fast unto death at Pune's Yerwada jail.
As the fast grew and Gandhiji started losing his health, everybody started requesting Dr. Ambedkar, and Dr. Ambedkar said, okay, I'll consider. And that is how the negotiation took place, and finally the Pune Pact has come out.
At the stroke of the midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom.
On 15th August 1947, as India finally awoke to freedom, the earlier bitterness between the two stalwarts was now matched by maturity and wisdom. As Law Minister, Dr. Ambedkar chaired the drafting committee, whose onerous task was to give a complex India her constitution. The boy who was once refused admission in school because of his caste was destined to write India's Bible of governance.
Our difficulty, as I said, is not about the ultimate future. Our difficulty is how to make the heterogeneous mess that we have today take a decision in common and march in a cooperative way on that road which is bound to lead us to unity.
On November 26, 1949, India got her constitution. A reflection of Babasaheb Bhimrao Ambedkar's faith in democracy and social justice. Regarded as one of the finest in the world, it banned untouchability in India. Justice, liberty, and equality became every Indian's fundamental right. The universality of his ideas were visible in other spheres as well.
His politics was always inclusive. His policies were always inclusive. You can look at his work in this Labour government, interim government in 1942. For example, minimum wages, he was asking for everybody. Good life conditions, working conditions for labourers, he was asking for everybody. Maternity leave for women, he was asking for every woman, not simply for Dalit women. So I think his imagination is universal and politics is inclusive in character.
Dr. Ambedkar was getting old now, but the hunt for challenges continued. The violin was one such new passion. The sadness perhaps came from losing his wife Ramabai and 4 of his sons at a young age. In 1948, at the age of 57, Babasaheb remarried. His wife, Dr. Sharda Kabir, was a Brahmin. The New York Times described the wedding as more significant than a commoner marrying into royalty. But Dr. Ambedkar wasn't done yet. He began drafting the Hindu Code Bill, aiming to grant women greater legal rights in the country. But his efforts to reorganize the framework of Hindu society were short-lived. the bill aroused bitter controversy and was abandoned by Prime Minister Nehru. Ambedkar quit the Union cabinet in disgust in 1951. What he did next shook the very foundations of Hinduism.
Buddham saranam gacchami.
On 14th October 1956, Dr. Ambedkar reached the Diksha Bhumi in Nagpur, accompanied by his wife. With lakhs of supporters as witness, Baba Sahib renounced Hinduism to embrace the path of Buddha. 4 lakh of his followers converted with him that day. Two months later, Baba Sahib Ambedkar passed away at the age of 65. Five decades later, Baba Sahib Bhimrao Ambedkar's legacy is more relevant than ever, leaving an impact deeper than many imagined. It's a testimony to why India counts him as one of its greatest ever.